The space station called Valora 7 floated in the dark emptiness between three different star systems. It was a place of learning. Students from 43 different alien species came here to study together. They learned about science, about other worlds, about how to live and work with beings that looked nothing like themselves. Jake Morrison was one of those students. He was also the only human in his entire class. Every morning, Jake would wake up in his small room on the station. He would wash his face with recycled water. He would eat the bland food that the station provided for humans. Then he would walk through the long metal hallways to his class's dot, and every morning, the aliens would stare at him. Jake had been at the station for 6 months now. He was used to the staring. He was used to the way the Villanthi students would move to the other side of the hallway when they saw him coming. The Villanthi were tall and thin, with bodies covered in soft purple feathers. They had hollow bones and gentle voices. They looked at Jake like he might break at any moment. He was also used to the Korathi. These beings were made of living crystal. They glowed with soft light from inside their bodies. When Jake walked past them, they would dim their glow and whisper to each other. Their language sounded like wind chimes in a storm. One day, as Jake walked to his advanced xenobiology class, he heard 2 Korathi students talking about him. "Look at him," one of them said. "His skin is so soft. You can see the blood moving under it." "I know," the other replied. "I read that humans can die from a small cut if they lose too much of that red liquid." "How do they survive?" "They barely do," the first one said. "Their planet kills them by the millions every year. Disease, accidents, their own sun gives them cancer if they stand under it too long." Jake kept walking. He did not say anything. He had learned that there was no point in arguing. The whole galaxy had already made up its mind about humans. 3 years ago, humans had made first contact with alien life. It was the biggest moment in human history. But for the galactic community, it was just another species joining the group. Not a very impressive species. They had decided Earth had been studied by alien scientists long before humans knew about it. The planet had been given a danger rating. It was labeled as a Class 4 hazardous world. This meant that the planet itself was extremely dangerous. Violent storms, extreme temperatures, earthquakes, volcanoes, oceans filled with salt that could kill most life forms, radiation from a yellow star that damaged living cells. But somehow, the aliens had decided that humans were weak. Jake did not understand this logic at first. How could a species that evolved on a dangerous world be seen as weak? But then he learned how the aliens thought about it. They looked at humans and saw what was missing. Humans had no armor on their bodies. The Morphic species had skin like stone that could stop a blade. Humans had thin skin that could be cut by paper. Humans had no natural weapons. The Zealous species had claws that could tear through metal. The Varathi had venomous stingers. The Krill had acid spit. Humans had small flat teeth and soft hands. Humans could not survive in extreme environments. The Morthak could walk in the vacuum of space for hours without dying. The Zealoth could swim in liquid metal. Humans needed special suits and equipment just to survive outside their narrow comfort zone. Humans needed to sleep for 8 hours every day. They needed to eat multiple times a day. They needed to drink water constantly or they would die. They got sick from tiny organisms they could not even see. To the aliens, humans were like babies. Soft, helpless, and always in danger. Jake reached his classroom and walked inside. The room was large and round, with seats arranged in a circle around a central platform. The seats were all different shapes and sizes to fit the different body types of the students. Jake found his seat. It was a simple chair, nothing special. Next to him was an empty space where a Morphic student usually sat. On his other side was a tank of blue liquid where a Zealoth floated during class. Professor Thrixel was already at the center platform. The professor belonged to a species called the Vorthani. He had a body like a giant insect with a hard shell and 4 arms. His head had 4 compound eyes that could see in all directions at once. When Jake sat down, all 4 of the professor's eyes turned to look at him. "Ah, the human student," Professor Thrixel said. "Are you feeling well today? The temperature in the room is set to galactic standard. Is that comfortable for you? I am fine, Professor, Jake said. Thank you for asking. The professor made a clicking sound with his mouth parts. Jake had learned that this meant he was worried. Please let me know if you need anything. We have medical supplies ready if you start to feel unwell. Human biology is so delicate. Jake just nodded. He had stopped correcting people months ago. More students entered the room. The Morthic student named Xylith took his place next to Jake. Xylith was huge, nearly 3 meters tall, with gray skin that looked like rough stone. His eyes were small and dark, set deep in a face that had no nose or ears. Human, Xylith said in greeting. His voice was deep and sounded like rocks grinding together. Xylith, Jake replied with a nod. Xylith looked at Jake for a long moment. I have a question about your kind, he said. But it can wait until class begins. Jake felt a small twist of worry in his stomach. Xylith was not cruel, but he was not friendly either. He asked questions that made Jake uncomfortable. Questions about human weakness. Questions about how humans managed to build a civilization when they could barely survive their own planet, but Jake just smiled and said, Sure, whatever you want to know. The class filled up with students from a dozen different species. Each one was different in some amazing way. Some could change their body color. Some could float in the air. Some had extra limbs or extra senses or extra brains, and then there was Jake, one human. Soft skin, no special powers, no natural weapons. He looked down at his hands, pink and small and fragile looking. But Jake knew something that these aliens did not understand. He knew what those hands had done throughout human history. He knew what humans were capable of when they needed to survive. Today, he had a feeling he might get a chance to explain. The lights in the room dimmed as the class began. Professor Thrixel activated the holographic display at the center of the room. Blue light filled the air, forming shapes and images. Today, the professor announced, we will study apex predators across the galaxy. Jake sat up a little straighter. He had been waiting for a topic like this, and somewhere in the back of the room, Xylith was also waiting. The holographic display showed a creature that made half the class gasp. It was a massive beast with 6 legs and a mouth full of curved teeth. Its body was covered in thick black scales that looked like armor. This is the blight serpent of Corax 9, Professor Thrixel explained. It is one of the most deadly predators in the known galaxy. A single blight serpent can kill 100 prey animals in one hunting cycle. It has no natural enemies on its world. The image rotated slowly. Students leaned forward to see the details. The teeth, the claws, the powerful muscles under those dark scales. Jake watched with interest. It was a scary creature, but something about it felt familiar to him. He had seen monsters before. Earth had plenty of its own. The professor changed the image. Now the display showed a creature that looked like a cloud of darkness with red eyes glowing inside it. The Void Stalker, the professor said. It lives in the gas clouds of the Epsilon Trianguli system. It hunts by sensing the electrical signals of other creatures. Nothing can hide from it. Nothing can escape it once it begins to chase. More gasps. A Valenthi student covered her eyes with her feathered wings. These predators are among the most dangerous in the galaxy, Professor Thrixel continued. They represent millions of years of evolution. They are perfect killing machines. Jake raised his hand slightly. The professor noticed and pointed one of his 4 arms at the human. Yes, Jake? Do you have a question? I was just wondering, Jake said, keeping his voice calm. Have you ever included Earth predators in this lesson? The room went quiet. Several students turned to look at Jake with surprise. Professor Thrixel's compound eyes blinked in a pattern that Jake recognized as nervousness. Earth predators are documented in the archives, the professor said carefully. However, given the protected status of humans, we try to avoid topics that might cause distress. Distress to who? Jake asked. The professor did not answer. But Jake understood. The galactic community thought that talking about Earth's dangers would upset the fragile humans. They were trying to protect his feelings. Jake was about to say more when another voice spoke up from the back of the room. I would like to know about Earth predators. Everyone turned to look at Xylith. The big Morthic was leaning forward in his seat, his dark eyes fixed on Jake. We have studied the apex predators of 17 worlds in this class, Xylith continued. Yet we never discussed the human homeworld. Earth is classified as extremely hazardous. Surely it must have some noteworthy predators. Professor Thrixol made a clicking sound. Xylith, I do not think this is appropriate. We must consider the human student's feelings. I do not have feelings about this, Jake said. He stood up from his seat. I do have feelings, but they are not hurt. I would be happy to tell the class about Earth predators. The professor hesitated. His forearms moved in a gesture that might have meant uncertainty. This is irregular. The lesson plan does not include Earth. Please, Professor, Jake said. I think it would be educational for everyone. There was a long moment of silence. Then the professor nodded slowly. Very well. If you wish to share, we welcome your contribution. But please be mindful of the other students. Some may be sensitive to disturbing images. Jake walked down to the center platform. He could feel every eye in the room following him. The soft human, the fragile creature. Walking to the front of the class to talk about predators, he connected his personal datapad to the holographic system. For a moment, the display was empty. Before I show you anything, Jake said, I want to ask a question. How many of you know what an ocean is? Most of the class raised their hands or made gestures of agreement. One student spoke up. A large body of liquid water, she said. Your planet has them. They are quite rare in the galaxy. That is right, Jake said. Earth has oceans. They cover about 70% of our planet's surface. The water is deep. In some places it goes down more than 10 kilometers. It is dark down there, cold, crushing pressure that would destroy most spacecraft. He tapped his datapad. We have only explored about 5% of our oceans. We do not know everything that lives down there. A Korathi student flickered with nervous light. You do not know what is in your own oceans? No, Jake said simply. We find new species every year. Some of them are strange. Some of them are dangerous. And some of them have been hunting in those waters for a very, very long time. He activated the holographic display. The image that appeared made the entire class go silent. It was a fish. But it was not like any fish the aliens had seen before. Its body was shaped like a torpedo, built for speed. Its skin was gray on top and white below. Its tail was powerful, made for explosive bursts of movement, and its mouth was open. Rows and rows of teeth filled that mouth. Sharp triangular teeth, each one as long as a human finger. They were not arranged in a neat line like normal teeth. They were stacked in rows, one behind another, like a nightmare. This, Jake said, is called a great white shark. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Jake let the image rotate slowly so everyone could see it from all angles. The shark is one of the oldest predators on Earth, he continued. It has existed in our oceans for about 400 million years. For comparison, trees have only existed on land for about 350 million years. Sharks are older than trees. They are older than dinosaurs. They are older than almost everything. 400 million years, Professor Thrixol repeated. His voice was quiet. The same species? Not exactly the same, Jake said. They evolved over time. But the basic design has stayed similar because it works so well. They are perfect hunters. He tapped his datapad again. Information appeared next to the image of the shark. Great white sharks can grow up to 6 meters long. They can weigh more than 2,000 kilograms. They have about 300 teeth in their mouth at any time. And when a tooth falls out, another one moves forward to take its place. A single shark can go through more than 30,000 teeth in its lifetime. A small sound came from one of the Valanthi students. It might have been a whimper. Their skin is covered in tiny structures called denticles, Jake continued. These are basically small teeth covering the whole body. If you rub a shark the wrong way, the skin will cut you. It is like being covered in sandpaper made of knives. Jake changed the image. Now it showed a great white shark swimming through blue water. Even in the still image, it looked powerful. It looked hungry. Sharks can smell blood in the water from 5 kilometers away. One drop of blood in an area the size of this room and they will know. They will come. They can also sense the electrical signals made by heartbeats. Even if their prey hides, even if their prey is silent and still, the shark can feel its heart beating. Xylith spoke from the back of the room. His stone-like face showed no emotion, but his voice was strange. How fast can it move? In short bursts, up to 40 kilometers per hour, Jake said. Fast enough to catch almost anything in the ocean. Fast enough to launch itself completely out of the water when it attacks from below. He showed another image. A great white shark exploding out of the ocean, water spraying everywhere, its jaws wide open around a seal. This is called breaching, Jake said. They hit their prey so hard that they fly into the air. The seal dies almost instantly from the impact. Professor Thrixall had stopped clicking. His 4 eyes were locked on the image. This creature. It lives in water that covers most of your planet? Yes, Jake said. And humans swim in this water? Yes, Jake said again, deliberately. Jake smiled. Every single day, we build beaches and resorts right next to shark-infested waters. Millions of humans swim in the ocean every year. We know the sharks are there. We go anyway. The room was completely silent. Jake looked around at the faces of his classmates. For the first time since he had arrived at the station, none of them looked at him with pity. They looked at him with something else entirely. Jake could feel the change in the room. The air felt different somehow, heavier, more serious. Every alien in the class was looking at him with new eyes. He decided to continue. The great white shark is impressive, Jake said. But I want to be clear about something. It is not the most dangerous thing in our oceans. It is not even close. Professor Thrixall made a sound that Jake's translator could not understand. It might have been disbelief. It might have been fear. There are creatures smaller than your hand that can kill you in minutes, Jake explained. He changed the holographic image. Now it showed a small octopus with bright blue rings on its body. This is called a blue-ringed octopus. It is about the size of a golf ball. Its venom can kill an adult human in less than 30 minutes. There is no cure. If you get bitten, you will stop being able to move. You will stop being able to breathe. But you will still be awake. You will feel everything as you die. The Karathi student named Prism made a sound like breaking glass. Why does something so small need such powerful venom? We do not know for certain, Jake said. Evolution does not care about fairness. It only cares about survival. This little octopus survived by being the most poisonous thing in the water. He changed the image again. This time it showed something that looked like a floating bag with long strings hanging below it. This is a box jellyfish. Those tentacles can be 3 meters long. They are covered in millions of tiny stinging cells. If you touch them, the pain is so extreme that people have drowned just from the shock. Survivors say it feels like being burned with acid while being electrocuted at the same time. And the venom attacks your heart, your skin, and your nervous system all at once. Do humans swim near these creatures too? Xylith asked. We try to avoid them, Jake admitted. But they are invisible in the water. You cannot see them until it is too late. Beaches in Australia have warning signs. Some beaches have special nets to keep the jellyfish out. But people still get stung every year. People still die. A Valanthi student raised a trembling wing. Why do you not simply stay away from the ocean? Jake looked at her. She was genuinely confused. The question was honest. Because the ocean is part of our world, Jake said. It has food. It has resources. It connects our lands together. Humans have sailed on the ocean for thousands of years. We could not avoid it even if we wanted to. He changed the image again. This time it showed a creature that looked almost like a giant lizard with a long tail and thick scales. Saltwater crocodile, Jake said. They can grow up to 7 meters long. They weigh over 1,000 kilograms. They have the strongest bite of any living animal on Earth. When they catch prey, they spin their whole body to tear off chunks of meat. They can hold their breath underwater for over an hour, waiting for something to come close to the water's edge. They hunt from hiding, Professor Thrixell said quietly. Ambush predators? Yes, Jake confirmed. They have been using the same hunting strategy for over 200 million years. They lived alongside dinosaurs. They survived while the dinosaurs died. They are still here, still hunting, still waiting. Jake could see that some students were gripping their seats. Others had gone completely still. One Zeleth had floated to the far edge of their tank, pressing against the glass as if trying to get away from the holographic images. But these are all individual hunters, Jake continued. Let me tell you about something worse. Let me tell you about pack hunters. He changed the display again. The new image showed a black and white creature that looked almost beautiful. It had a smooth body, a tall fin on its back, and a pattern that seemed almost friendly compared to the shark. This is an orca, Jake said. Humans sometimes call them killer whales, but they are actually the largest members of the dolphin family. They are extremely intelligent. They can communicate with each other using complex sounds. They work together as a family group called a pod. They seem less frightening than the shark, a student observed. Jake smiled slightly. That is what makes them more dangerous. Orcas have been observed doing something remarkable. When they find a seal resting on a floating piece of ice, they do not just attack it. They work together to create waves. They swim in formation, pushing water with their bodies, making waves that wash over the ice and knock the seal into the water. He showed a video. The class watched as several orcas swam toward an ice floe where a seal was resting. They dove deep, then rose together, their bodies creating a perfect wave that swept across the ice. The seal tumbled into the water, right into the waiting jaws of another orca. They teach this technique to their young, Jake said. They practice it even when they are not hungry. They develop strategies. They adapt their hunting methods based on what they are hunting. Orcas in different parts of the ocean have different cultures, different languages, different traditions passed down through generations. Professor Thrixell's voice was very quiet now. You are describing a sapient species. We are not certain about that, Jake said. But they are definitely aware. They definitely learn. They definitely plan. And they hunt in your oceans. The same oceans where humans swim. Yes, the professor was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again. The galactic classification of your species as fragile and requiring protection. It was based on your physical characteristics. No natural armor. No venom, short lifespan. Constant biological needs. I know, Jake said. But nobody asked about your world. Nobody asked what else lives there. Jake nodded slowly. Our scientists believe that Earth was hit by a large asteroid about 66 million years ago. It killed most of the large animals on the planet. The dinosaurs, which had ruled the Earth for over 100 million years, died almost completely. The world became dark and cold. Most species went extinct. He paused, looking around at his captive audience. But the sharks survived. The crocodiles survived. The things in the deep ocean where the impact barely touched them, they survived. And when conditions improved, they were still there. Still hunting. Still waiting. When humans eventually evolved, we were surrounded by predators that had been perfecting the art of killing for hundreds of millions of years. The room felt very cold despite the climate control. We had no armor, Jake said. No claws. No venom. No size advantage? We should have been prey. We should have been food for the things that had been hunting since before the dinosaurs existed. He met the eyes of every student he could. But we were not food. We were something else. Something that had never existed on Earth before. Xylith leaned forward. His stone-like face was as unreadable as ever, but his posture had changed. What were you? Jake smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was something older. Something sharper. We were the ones who learned to hunt back. The holographic display flickered and changed. Now it showed something new. An old drawing made by humans thousands of years ago, scratched onto the wall of a cave. It showed tiny stick figures with sharp objects in their hands. They were surrounding a much larger shape. An animal, a predator. And the small figures were winning. "This is what humans do," Jake said. "We figure things out. We make tools. We work together. And we do not stop, ever." The cave painting stayed on the display for a long moment. Nobody in the class spoke. The image was simple. It was primitive, but it told a story that every being in the room could understand. Small creatures with no natural weapons had brought down something much bigger and stronger than themselves. Jake changed the display again. This time it showed a human standing in a wooden boat, arm raised, holding a long spear. Beneath the boat, the massive shape of a whale was visible in the dark water. "For thousands of years," Jake said, "humans hunted whales. These are among the largest animals that have ever lived on Earth. Some species grow to 30 meters long. They weigh over 100 tons. They could crush a wooden boat by accident just by surfacing in the wrong place." He pointed at the image. "And humans hunted them with boats held together by rope and tar, using spears thrown by hand." "That is not possible," a zealous student said. Their voice bubbled through their translation device. "The size difference alone makes it absurd." "You would think so," Jake agreed. "But here is what humans did. They learned. They watched the whales for generations. They figured out where the whales traveled, what routes they followed across the ocean. They figured out where the whales were most vulnerable. They developed techniques. They shared knowledge between communities across continents over centuries." He changed the image to show an old photograph, black and white, faded with age. It showed a massive whale being pulled alongside a wooden ship. Dozens of men stood on the deck, looking small next to the enormous creature. By the time this photograph was taken, humans had been hunting whales for over 1,000 years. We had developed entire industries around it. Ships that could stay at sea for years. Methods for processing the bodies. Trade networks that spanned the globe. Professor Thricksall made a strange sound. "You hunted these giant creatures to extinction?" "Almost," Jake said. "We came very close with several species. Eventually, we created laws to protect them. Now their populations are recovering in most places. But for a long time, the largest animals on Earth feared humans more than they feared anything else in the ocean." The professor's compound eyes moved in a pattern Jake did not recognize. "You said earlier that sharks are older than trees, that crocodiles survived events that killed the dinosaurs. These creatures are ancient. They are perfectly adapted hunters. And you are telling me that humans with no natural weapons hunted them?" "Not just hunted them," Jake said. "Controlled them, farmed them, kept them as entertainment." He showed a new image, a massive aquarium tank filled with blue water. Swimming inside the tank was a great white shark. Watching from outside the glass were dozens of humans, many of them children. "This is a shark kept in captivity," Jake explained. "Humans catch them, transport them, and keep them in tanks so other humans can come and look at them. For fun." The silence in the room was absolute. "Great whites do not survive long in captivity," Jake continued. "They need to swim constantly, and most tanks are too small. So humans keep trying different methods. We keep experimenting. We are very stubborn about things like this." A Korathi student named Prism spoke up. Her crystalline voice was unsteady. "I do not understand. You take one of the most dangerous predators on your world and you put it in a box so children can look at it. For entertainment, yes, are you not afraid?" Jake thought about the question for a moment. "Humans are always afraid," he said. "Fear is part of how we survive, but we do not let fear stop us. When we see something dangerous, something that might kill us, we study it. We try to understand it. And then we figure out how to live alongside it or how to control it." He changed the display again. This time it showed a different kind of image. A woman floating in open water, no cage, no protection, mere meters away from a massive great white shark. Her name is Katie Brooks, Jake said. She is a marine biologist. Her job is to study sharks in their natural habitat. She dives with them regularly. No weapons, no armor. Just her and the ocean and the oldest predators on Earth. She is insane, Xylas said flatly. Many people think so, Jake admitted with a slight smile. But she has learned more about shark behavior than almost anyone else alive. She can read their body language. She knows when they are hunting, when they are curious, when they are agitated. She has touched them, guided them, swam alongside them in the open ocean. How is she still alive? Skill, knowledge, experience, and a little bit of luck. Jake shrugged. Humans who work with dangerous animals often die. It happens. But others take their place. We keep learning. We keep pushing. He showed another image. This one was historical, an old painting from centuries ago. It showed a sailing ship being attacked by an enormous sea creature. Tentacles wrapped around the masts. Sailors fell into churning water. For thousands of years, sailors reported seeing monsters in the deep ocean, Jake said. Giant tentacles that could pull ships under. Eyes as big as dinner plates watching from the darkness. Most people thought these stories were myths, exaggerations, the fears of superstitious sailors. He changed the image to a photograph. It showed a massive squid lying on the deck of a modern ship. Scientists in white coats stood around it, measuring its tentacles. This is a giant squid. They live in the deep ocean, thousands of meters below the surface. They can grow up to 13 meters long. Their eyes are the largest of any living animal. They fight and kill sperm whales. For centuries, humans had no proof they existed. Just stories from terrified sailors. Jake looked around the room. We kept going to sea anyway. We knew something was down there. Something that had killed our people, destroyed our ships. We did not know what it was or how to fight it. And we kept sailing. That is foolish, a Valanthi student whispered. Maybe, Jake said. Oh, maybe it is something else. Humans have a word for it. We call it determination. When something scares us, when something hurts us, we do not always run away. Sometimes we run toward it. We need to know. We need to understand. Even if it kills us. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The ocean has taken countless human lives. Ships have disappeared without a trace. Entire crews lost to storms, to creatures, to the endless hungry dark. And every time it happened, more humans built more ships and sailed back out. We mapped the currents. We charted the dangers. We learned the patterns of the predators. Sometimes they won. Sometimes we won. But we never stopped. Professor Thrixol spoke slowly, as if choosing each word very carefully. The Galactic Council classified humans as a fragile species. They assigned you protected status. They believed you needed to be shielded from danger. I know, Jake said. They were looking at your bodies. Your physical limitations, yes. They did not ask about your minds. They did not ask about your history. Jake nodded. They saw soft skin and assumed we were soft inside. They saw that we died easily and assumed we gave up easily. They did not understand that humans have been dying on our planet for 200,000 years. We die all the time. We die in ways that would terrify most species in this galaxy. And we keep coming back. We keep building. We keep exploring. We keep hunting. He looked directly at the professor. Humans are not fragile. We just look that way from the outside. The display showed one final image. It was Earth seen from space. Blue oceans covering most of the surface. White clouds swirling over continents. A beautiful planet, peaceful and calm from a distance. But everyone in the room now knew what lurked in those blue waters. They knew what walked on those green lands. They knew what waited in the darkness that humans had still not fully explored. And they knew that humans had not only survived on that world, they had conquered it. The class ended in silence. There was no discussion. There were no questions. Professor Thrixall simply looked at the image of Earth floating in the holographic display, then dismissed the students with a quiet wave of his 4 arms. Jake walked back to his seat and gathered his things. He could feel the other students watching him, but the feeling was different now. Before today, they had watched him with concern, with pity, like he was something fragile that might break. Now they watched him with something else. As the students filed out of the room, several of them nodded at Jake as they passed. A Korathi student actually stopped and spoke to him. "Thank you for the lesson," she said. Her crystal voice had a new tone that Jake had not heard before. It was educational. Jake just nodded back. He did not know what to say. He walked through the halls of the station, heading toward the observation deck. It was a large room with windows that looked out into space. Jake often came here to think, to remember home, to watch the stars drift by in the endless darkness. When he arrived, he found that he was not alone. Xylith was already there. The big Morthic stood near the windows, his stone-like body perfectly still. He did not turn when Jake entered, but he spoke anyway. "I owe you an apology, human." Jake walked over and stood beside him. He was barely half the Morthic's height. From this angle, Xylith looked like a statue carved from gray rock. "An apology for what?" Jake asked. "For the question I asked in class. I asked about Earth predators because I wanted to embarrass you. I thought if the class heard about the dangers of your world, they would understand how weak your species truly is, how you survived only by luck, how you do not belong among the other species of the galaxy." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That is an honest thing to admit." "Morthic do not lie," Xylith said. "We believe that truth is more important than comfort. So I will tell you another truth." He finally turned to look at Jake. His small dark eyes were impossible to read, but his voice had changed. There was something new in it. "I was wrong about your species," Xylith said. "The Galactic Council was wrong. Everyone was wrong." Jake leaned against the window frame and looked out at the stars. "What made you change your mind? The sharks? The jellyfish? The crocodiles?" "No," Xylith said. "Those creatures are dangerous. But dangerous creatures exist on many worlds. What changed my mind was the way you talked about them." "What do you mean?" Xylith was quiet for a moment, searching for the right words. "When you showed us those predators, you were not afraid. You were not even impressed. You described creatures that have been killing your kind for millions of years, and you spoke about them like they were just part of your world. Just another challenge to overcome." He shook his massive head slowly. "And then you showed us the image of the woman swimming with the shark. No protection. No weapons. Just a human floating in the water next to something that could kill her in seconds. And she was studying it, learning from it. Katie Brooks," Jake said. "She has done great work." "That is insane," Xylith said bluntly. "But it is also something else. It is brave. It is curious. It is stubborn in a way that I have never seen from any species." Jake smiled slightly. "Humans are very stubborn. I am beginning to understand that." They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Distant suns burned in the void, each one surrounded by worlds that humans had never seen. The galaxy was vast. It was full of mysteries, full of dangers that made Earth's oceans look like calm pools. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said eventually. Xylith nodded. "What made you think humans were weak in the first place? I mean, before the council classification, before you learned about our planet, what was your first impression?" Xylith considered the question. "You are small. You have no natural defenses. You cannot survive in vacuum. You cannot survive in extreme heat or cold. You need constant maintenance. Food, water, sleep. You get sick from invisible organisms. You can be killed by a fall from a height that would not bother a Morthic child." "All true," Jake agreed. "So I assumed you were prey. A species that had somehow developed technology, but at its core was still prey. That is what the council assumed. That is what everyone assumed. And now?" Xylith was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his grinding voice was thoughtful. Now I think the council made a classification error. They looked at your bodies and saw weakness. They did not look at your world and see what you overcame. They did not look at your history and see what you survived. They did not look at your eyes and see what burns behind them. He turned to face Jake directly. You are not fragile creatures from a dangerous world. You are dangerous creatures from an impossible world. There's a very large difference. Jake felt something warm in his chest. Pride, maybe. Or just relief that someone finally understood. We prefer the term survivors, he said. I think I prefer the term allies, Xylith replied. If there is ever conflict in this galaxy, if something comes out of the dark spaces between stars, I would rather have Earth's children standing beside me than against me. Jake laughed softly. Most species in the galaxy would probably disagree with you. They still see us as the fragile ones. Then they will learn, Xylith said. As I learned today, the galaxy is large, human. There are things out there that we have not discovered yet. Things in the darkness. Things that hunt and kill and feel no mercy. I know, Jake said. Does that frighten you? Jake thought about the question. He thought about the deep ocean, where creatures lived that humans had never seen. He thought about the ancient sharks swimming in the darkness for 400 million years. He thought about his ancestors climbing out of trees onto a world that wanted to kill them in 1,000 different ways. We grew up on Earth, he said. Compared to what is waiting in our own backyard, the rest of the galaxy seems almost friendly. He paused, then smiled. Besides, whatever is out there in the dark has never met humans before. It has never met something that refuses to give up, something that hunts back, something that takes the most dangerous predators on its own world and puts them in tanks for children to look at. Xylith made a sound that might have been a laugh. It sounded like boulders rolling down a mountain. The dark things should be afraid, he said. Maybe, Jake agreed. Or maybe they will be curious. Maybe they will watch us the same way we watch sharks, with fascination and respect and a healthy amount of fear. The stars continued their slow journey past the window. Somewhere out there, billions of worlds orbited billions of suns. Some of those worlds held life. Some of that life was intelligent. And some of that intelligence was still sleeping in the darkness, waiting to wake up. But humans were already here. Already exploring. Already asking questions and pushing boundaries and reaching for things that might be too dangerous to touch. Jake looked at his reflection in the window. A small human. Soft skin, no claws. No venom, no armor, but his eyes were sharp. His mind was quick. And behind him stood thousands of generations of ancestors who had faced down monsters and won. The galaxy thought humans were fragile. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it was. I should go? Jake said eventually. I have another class in an hour. Xylith nodded. I will see you tomorrow, human. And I will remember what you taught us today. Jake walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back. Xylith? Thanks for asking that question in class. If you had not, I would never have had the chance to explain. The Morthic's stone face did not change, but something in his posture softened slightly. You are welcome, Deathworlder. Jake smiled at the word. It was not an insult. It was not a classification. It was recognition of what humans truly were, creatures, forged by a world that never stopped trying to kill. Them survivors of the impossible. Deathworlders. Walked out of the observation deck and into the busy halls of the station. Aliens of a dozen species moved around him, going about their business. Some of them still looked at him with the old pity, the old concern, but a few of them nodded with respect as he passed. The word would spread. The story would travel. And slowly, one lesson at a time, the galaxy would learn the truth about the soft pink creatures from the little blue planet. Humans were not the prey. Humans were never the prey, and anything that thought otherwise would learn that lesson the hard way. Just like everything else that had ever made that mistake on Earth.